All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to RealGM Radio. I'm your host, Wes Goldberg. Today, Katie Heindl and I talk about what skinny Luka means for the Lakers and for the Mavericks. We talk about our experiences at Las Vegas Summer League and revisit a bunch of offseason topics with a new perspective. Let's jump in. All right, it's RealGM Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in. The best way to support the show is to hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Make sure you're following us on your favorite podcast app. To get the show every week, Katie Heindl is here. You know her from the Basketball Feelings newsletter, and now as an instructor for Sports Business Classroom. I actually do want to talk about that experience here in a second. But first, thanks for coming on the show, especially during this time of year, because it's the dead time of the NBA season. It's a good time, I guess, reflect on the offseason, kind of look forward. But just generally speaking, what does it look like this time of year for you?
Never very chill. I feel like everyone else I know is like, oh yeah, I'm taking a vacation, taking time off. Like, this is my time to relax. And I'm like, cool. I guess you haven't picked up a million other off-season projects to do or projects that run through the off-season. So yeah, a little bit more relaxed in the sense that, you know, we don't have NBA games going full tilt, but as someone who still covers the W, I've got that going on. I've got a few larger projects, namely trying to finish my book,
Mm-hmm.
and working on a few other kind of like consulting projects in and around basketball. So never quite a dead time, but I do like to see what all of our friends and colleagues, like what are their vacations like and how nice that must feel.
To go on Instagram and just say, oh, that's cool, you're in Europe. It
Yes.
must be nice in Madrid this time
Everyone's
of year.
in Europe right now.
Exactly. But not us. We're here in front of some microphones and podcasting because that's what we do here. I want to start with Luka Doncic. Story of the week here at the start of the week. Men's Health did a big feature on Luka Doncic. There's a ton of angles to this. There's the Luka motivation part of this after getting traded from Dallas, what this means to the Lakers, what this means for Mavericks fans, that he decided to do his story with Men's Health, of all places, also seems really intentional. What angle is most interesting to you?
The angle that it was shot at, so he looks extra skinny. No, I'm teasing. But I was actually looking at that. I'm like, oh, this is an interesting like front side kind of angle. No, I saw someone point out that it's like the perfect sort of revenge against your ex kind of story, like a story everyone knows of like you get really in shape, especially in the summer, you're looking good. A great story like this drops, ultimate sort of revenge plot against the person or people in this case who maybe did you wrong.
Yeah, this is the post on Instagram where it's like, when did that guy get a six-pack? It's, oh, yeah, they broke up with his girlfriend 3 months ago. It's or the girl with the new tall boyfriend or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to be a little bit more sincere and serious, I always find the fascination with athletes' bodies, especially within the NBA, especially for the repetitions, I think, of like critiques that somebody like Luka Doncic has had against him like throughout his career to be very interesting. I do find it gross for the most part. This time seems at least a little bit more celebratory and probably a little bit more on his own terms. You know, you mentioned the choice to go with Men's Health. I do feel like doing this with a different kind of outlet, maybe not necessarily like an ESPN sort of like cover story or something like that, feels a little bit more like it was a very conscious decision by his camp. So that makes me feel, hopefully this is a little bit less gross. I mean, the fixation on it remains gross and strange. People can have whatever kind of bodies they want and be very good at basketball still. You know, we do see that every season, but I don't know, the man looks good. He seems happy. This feels like a really LA, like anywhere else moving to LA sort of trajectory.
I agree with the part with how we cover like the NBA player body, like the whole skinny prefix attached to player X, right? Whether it's skinny Luka or skinny Kyle Lowry, skinny this, skinny that. Like I don't think it's a problem that we talk about it. I think it's more of a problem how we talk about it, right? Like a player's conditioning is central to how they perform on the court, like or in any sport, right? Like that part of it makes sense, but the whole skinny fat, looking at camera. This is also a thing that happens with Muscle Watch every summer with every single player. It's like, I don't know how much to believe in the still photos, right? Like they could be doctored, they could be, to your point, taken at a specific angle to not reveal the double chin. Like it's all of that stuff. Like I need to see this guy out there on the court to really have a feel for what his conditioning level is at, especially after a year where Luka was coming off of a leg injury that sidelined him for a month and all that stuff. Like the injury, the health, the conditioning part is interesting. You know, the whole skinny fat part of it, less interesting. I mean, you know, took the Mavericks to the finals 2 years ago, and nobody was complaining then. So
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about the men's health part of this too, because you're Luka Doncic. You could go anywhere with this piece, right? You could invite ESPN, The Athletic. You can invite Bleacher Report to do some sort of big video series on you, right? Like you can invite anybody. You can invite one of the NBA's new partners to come out with you and do a big thing on it. He chose men's health. That to me felt really intentional because if only to get the cover with your photo on it underneath the word health, right? Like it felt like this had to be a story, not about basketball, because I'm sure Luka's, and there was very little basketball in the story. They didn't revisit the Mavericks trade. They didn't ask him how he felt when he got traded, when he woke up, and so none of that was in there. It was all gluten-free diet, 260 grams of protein. It was just a very like men's healthy type of piece, which is obviously what Luka was going for here.
Yeah, it feels like a very conscious framing, a very wellness framing. Yeah. A part of that I can understand from a branding perspective, as I kind of mentioned, you know, probably from his camp and the decision to do that. A part of it does kind of bum me out because I think it's really difficult to look at that framing and get away from all the critiques that he's had right across his career. So like framing it this way feels to me like giving it a bit more legitimacy, or this sense of like, no, it's for real this time. Right. You know, it's because of wellness. It's not because of, you know, all the other critiques that he's kind of been under before for his like health and conditioning and things like that. And again, like as we've said, I think if conditioning was a question, maybe, but it was never enough to kind of limit his competitiveness, right? Or limit what he would bring to the Mavericks and in that sense. So, well, again, I feel like the consciousness of it makes me feel like happy for him and his team. There's still something about it that bums me out because it's like it had to come down to men's health, you know?
Right. And speaking of the framing too, right? Like the framing that this was all in response to getting traded from Dallas, which was clearly heartbreaking for him. I think that part of it is another one of these angles where I think if you're a Mavericks fan, you're going to just feel a type of way, especially if Luka comes out, guns blazing, isn't playing his way into shape, looks healthy, no leg injury, no lingering stuff from that. And it's just, like the first month of the year is just averaging like 36 and 6, right? Like that would just be the worst possible thing for a Mavericks team that's also going to be working in a rookie will be playing a major role for them. Won't have Kyrie Irving, and Anthony Davis had his cornea separated, which I don't know what that means, but it sounds extremely painful and awful, and had to have surgery for it. So more likely than not, Dallas is probably going to start the year a little bit slowly. And if the Lakers come out, who always have a favorable schedule to start the year, with LeBron playing motivated, Luka looking like this, and playing better than he looked at the end of last season, that's going to be really painful for Mavericks fans. But again, going back to the framing part of this, I don't really know how much this has to do with getting traded from Dallas, although that seems to be like the talking point.
Yeah. I mean, if like I'll say if there's this lingering injury and it's a leg injury, I understand the desire to get leaner, you know, to up your conditioning, because as you get older, you know, in life, those things become very nagging and they can become pretty residual. And, you know, you look at someone, I mean, the Kawhi Leonard's injury is a lot different, but just the fact that that's something that, you know, he's going to deal with for the rest of his life. So there has to be a certain level, I think, when we talk about like health and wellness and conditioning with NBA level athletes, there has to be a certain level, I think, of like future proofing the body as best as you can. So I don't think Dallas fans should feel too sad about that. If this is somebody they still, I think my sense of it is they still have his best interests at heart, because it's like he was traded. He didn't request this trade, right?
Mhm.
So I hope that the health and wellness part of Luka Doncic is still front of mind. And to be fair, like, again, this is a thing where I feel like a lot of Mavericks fans might feel a bit like held hostage by the front office, but the moves that were made, you had to know this was going to be a bit of a rebuild. If not,
Right.
rebuild's the wrong word.
Reset?
Reshifting of priorities here.
Good.
Yeah.
Reshift, I think, is good. Yeah.
Yeah, they were never going to come into it kind of guns blazing. I think the way that the Lakers almost now have to. The Lakers are also set up, I think, with a lot tighter of a runway. Like, okay, are we trying to dump LeBron James, which sounds like such an insane thing to say, but it's kind of where we are. So like the two franchises, if you want to take it with a grain of salt, are in such different headspaces and have to like deal with those futures accordingly. Yeah.
I think one of the underrated parts of this story too, just going back to the piece itself, beyond the things that have really grabbed the headlines and been talked about here, Luka did actually discuss a little bit, or maybe I don't remember if there was a direct quote from Luka, but there was something insinuating how Luka, it took a while for him to get used to the NBA life off the court, even if he was just amazing the instant he touched foot on the court between the lines, right? Like there was something about coming over from Europe and coming to America, living in Dallas, and they're open about, at least the people around Luka, about how the fact that took a while for him to figure that part of it out. And I do think when it comes to the conditioning part of things, like in Europe, where obviously Luka came up playing in those leagues, like conditioning and health just isn't taken quite as seriously as it is among NBA stars who grow up, or American stars rather, who kind of grow up idolizing guys like LeBron and Steph and $1 million on your body every, like it's just not. It's not to say that in Europe they don't care about that stuff, but it's a little bit different where it's the whole like grind culture thing in America where it kind of just like it all falls into place there. But Luka, he's 26 going into his 8th season. This is generally when NBA players start to take these health and conditioning things really seriously. And there were already rumblings that after his leg injury that sidelined him for more than a month last year, that he was kind of already on this path of, you know what, I got to make sure that if I do tweak something in the middle of the year, that it's not going to set me behind because of my conditioning or my health or my diet or whatever it is. So I thought that part of the story was interesting in terms of just coming over from Europe, coming to America, and then coming and playing at an 82-game NBA schedule, how long that really took him to figure out. And the scary part of it is, oh my God, it took him a while. He's just now figuring that part of it out. How much better can this guy be? Like, I almost wonder if we're sort of underrating Luka after all of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you touch on a lot of like myriad good points, and especially I think the Americanism, right, of like you're treating your body. It's tough because I've heard this from athletes, right, of like it is a really real thing, especially in the pipeline of American basketball, where you have to look at what can edge you out above your competition, like down to in this case, like the musculature level, right? It's why places like P3 exist, where you can go and athletes go and now pay their own money to get these independent assessments, right? Of like their wingspan, how high they can jump, like improvements that they can like basically map out. Oh, you land a millimeter this way, and we can now trace that within 3 years that could have some debilitating effects on your ankle, which could lead to debilitating effects on your knee, which is so fascinating.
I remember doing the story on Miles Turner years and years and years ago. This is probably 5-6 years ago, about how he underwent. I don't know if it was at P3, but it was at someone. It might have been P3,
probably.
But how they saw that his gait was just a little off.
Yeah.
And he had to start doing yoga in order to fix it. Like that was the recommendation. So he started doing yoga. I don't know if he still does yoga, but I haven't talked to him about it. But yeah, I talked to him about it then. And yeah, he's like, yeah, I had to do yoga and like my gait changed and all these things. And it was for his long-term health. It's crazy what they could figure out.
There's a ton of things like that. And some are very real. Like, like, okay, you've got to look at your flexibility and you've got to change the way you step and jump and move. And sometimes the things that they find, like I won't say who, but there was like someone that they had in, and it was like a purely psychosomatic sense of how they were landing. They were landing in this way where they were kind of like they felt like they needed a little bit more cushion. So they just basically made them a shoe with a bit more cushion, and it corrected the problem. But that they didn't really have a problem in the first place. It was all mental. But, to your point, I think it's not the Americanness of it, like speaking as a not American, is a very real thing of like your body and like monetization, But in the NBA, I will say, to want to prolong your performance or just kind of like, safety treat your body, I think that's not necessarily a bad thing or like kind of a profitability thing. That's just wanting, you want longevity in the tool that you play basketball with, right? And you want to have a better kind of mental connection with your body. That I think is all very positive. And to your point too, I think, yes, a lot of athletes get into this era of their career when you know that the average NBA career is still something like 4 to 5 years, right? Certainly not for someone of Luka's caliber, but that is still the general average of like, okay, now you really need to take seriously the things that you're doing to try and prolong that career. You mentioned Kyle Lowry earlier. Like I can remember his season in Toronto when he got like super jacked and then like went to Miami and got even more jacked. And it's probably around the same time, right? Like that's the trajectory I think that a lot of athletes take when they're like, my other skills might be, I'm not going to get faster. I'm probably not going to like pick up a new, like my 3-point shooting is what it is. So like, what are the other things I can do? And I think Luka's very much there now. Of course, environmental factors definitely play into it. He probably just has access to a lot better doctors and trainers and things like that in LA and specialists that deal with this kind of thing all the time. So it's like definitely a collection of all of it, but I wouldn't say it's some big correction, right? It feels like a very natural trajectory for an athlete in his position.
Exactly. And that's why I think maybe some of the revenge on the Mavericks, the revenge on Nico Harrison, part of it is a little overstated because it feels like this was sort of a natural progression for Luka to take, especially after being injured last year. Like that is a natural response to having an injury. He gets hurt on Christmas Day. He sat out. And the Mavericks looked every bit a contender before he got hurt. Like that team was, I think they were like, I forget what the record is, so I don't want to get it wrong, but they were on a run, and then he gets hurt on Christmas, and then turns out the last game he ever played in a Mavericks uniform, and so I could understand why he would want to make some changes even after that, even if he wasn't already planning on making those changes. My hot take is that I think gluten-free is the two words that might get sports fans the most excited. For your,
like in an angry way?
No, in the best way. Like oh my God, this magazine feature just dropped and my star player is now gluten-free. This is going to be the best season of his career. Like that, for any NBA fan, NFL, like I just feel like you see these kinds of things pop up all the time. Like it's once a summer that an NBA star goes gluten-free. And I think if you're a fan in the NBA, you're crossing your fingers hoping it's your team star.
I mean, like Luka's European. There's a lot of additives that that like his body's not used to, especially in bread. It's like the way the wheat is. You could get fully into it, but like, yeah, maybe.
I have something that I'm working on. I'm not ready to completely reveal it, but it is the NBA All-Epiphany team.
Okay, I thought you were going to be like, it's the gluten-free index.
The gluten-free
the NBA gluten-free index.
I have statistics of players before and after they eliminate gluten from their diet, and you would be shocked at the results. Coming up next. No, the All-Epiphany team. It's the team every year. It's the same players, and you know who they are. They pop up this is the year. Like I figured this part of it. I just changed. I'm getting my diet this. I'm doing this with my workout. I figured out I got to lean into this with my game or whatever it is. Luka wasn't on it. Mm-hmm. He's working his way onto it. And I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but he's working his way onto it. I have to consider him for the All-Epiphany team. Okay.
I know you're not ready to unleash, but like you have to say one more person that you've got on that list.
Okay, the obvious one is Zion.
But Zion's a perennial.
He's the captain. Yeah, he's like the player coach. Yeah, he's actually recruiting players onto the team.
I'd like to nominate Brandon Ingram.
That's a great one. Give me the Brandon Ingram case.
New team, new country.
Yeah.
New set of like support cast.
Hmm.
New but like I think this is probably the reason that I've heard the most. It's like the health and wellness team around him, famously that got Kawhi Leonard, back on his feet, back into really competitive form.
Yep.
That unfortunately for a lot of people introduced like this idea of the oh my god, I'm blanking on the term that everybody hates so much. When someone is resting in a game.
Load
Oh
management.
my god, sorry, Alex McKechnie. We're in summer hours. Load management. He's like now in the wings of this, and I think very much has been touted as like even with Masai gone, like this is next gen Raptors. Like this is the next iteration of the team. And I don't know,
Yep.
personally, I still want the best for this guy.
I have not sold my Brandon Ingram stock at all. I think he's an underrated playmaker. We know what he is as a scorer. I think he'll buy in defensively eventually. And I just am generally interested in players who leave New Orleans and
I'm
just to
always
see what
interested.
happens. Yeah.
Zion being the top on this list, like the
Right.
perennial coach, like captain of this team, rather. And we're talking about like health and wellness and athletic training.
Yep.
New Orleans, still something they're not working.
Who knows? Maybe it's the fact that they don't have a medical staff, it seems.
When players collectively then years later either breathe a sigh of relief when they leave the Pelicans or then openly talk about how relieved they are to leave the Pelicans, that's something worth paying attention to.
It is. I'll give you one more on the list because this is fun.
Okay.
D'Angelo Russell might be my favorite.
Oh yeah.
I have a soft spot for D'Lo. I'll be honest. I wrote a feature on him a few years ago and spoke with him and people in his family and people around him, and I just kind of developed this soft spot just because I just have a soft spot in general for the overconfident gunslinging scorer who doesn't care about any other part of the game. It's not impactful to winning. It doesn't, but I just, for some reason, I'm attracted to those players. I'm like, I just enjoy them being in the NBA. As much as the NBA wants to math all these players out and be like two-way this and advanced analytics that, I'm like, I just love the players who just grew up being like, I love to put this ball in that circle, and that's all I care about. And D'Lo's very much that. But he's on the All-Epiphany team because it just feels like every year he finds a new way to talk about how he's going to change his game. And I remember my favorite one was probably a couple years ago where he was back on the Lakers, and he was like, I'm going to be Derek White. And I love, because first of all, you never hear players compare themselves to other players or be like, I'm going to play more like that guy, let alone contemporaries. Like you, and I'm sure you've asked this question. It's still one of my favorite questions to ask, even though it very rarely elicits a good response, is who were some of the players that you compare your game to or grew up idolizing and stuff? Because you will sometimes get something. And most of them are just like, yeah, I'm my own guy. I only play my way. And you're like, yeah, not really. It's still, there's only so many ways to play this game. But D'Lo, for him to do that, I thought was really interesting. And then he literally didn't do it. He just came out and was just old D'Angelo Russell and did nothing like Derek White. And I was like, this is awesome. And that's why he's also on my All-Epiphany team.
And he probably said it in the third person.
He probably did.
If he ditches that, I'm fully behind him.
Most surprising third person quote in the NBA, I think, has to be Dante DiVincenzo, who
interesting.
does talk about Dante.
Huh.
Talks about Dante.
I haven't seen this.
It's how things are for Dante and how things can, be difficult for Dante.
I don't doubt things get difficult for Dante.
No, probably not. All right, let's shift gears. I want to talk about Summer League. You just wrote your summer installment, maybe, fair word?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. So it was the 6th installment of your Summer League series. And the subhead here, 11 Days in the Desert, as always, an attempt to get it all down. And I love the way that you do these things because it's just like this scatter shot of different scenes and emotions and quotes and things that you've observed, and some of it is long and some of it is short. And it kind of just, when you put it all together, all the little pixels kind of come together and give you some sort of feeling of how Summer League went for you. And what was interesting about this year's installment was that you taught at this summer's sports business classroom. You wrote about how you made a critique on one of your students' recap assignments because she had a tendency to, I guess, oversimplify I don't generally like to read things back to people who wrote them, but I want to share it with the audience because I found this very interesting and I want to dig into this. So you can cover your ears because I know this can be cringe for people who actually write the thing. Quote, she simplifies, streamlines, kills off what comes natural and more expressive. She has broader, livelier language. I've read it, but holds it back, thinking about this critical composite reader. That instinct to put what you're seeing and how you're seeing it down, that's all I want, I tell her. Don't bury it. We have enough of that for lifetimes, end quote. This is the piece, this is the part that I came away with just as a writer, as somebody who does stuff like this also, has written a countless amount of game recaps. This really resonated with me. I do think that there's a lesson in there, not only for writers, but for anybody working on something. But can you tell me a little bit more about what you meant there with your student?
Mm-hmm. So I'll clarify. So this was my probably 5th year at Sports Business Classroom, but it was my 2nd year running what is essentially the media broadcast stream with Howard Beck and J.A. Adonde. And in kind of like redeveloping the way that we approach that media broadcast stream. If people are not familiar, Sports Business Classroom, it's a program that runs in what we say the 2nd week of Summer League, but it's really the first full week of Summer League, Monday to Saturday. Students, typically college students, but sometimes second careers, third careers, which is always wonderful. Either they want to work in basketball someplace, but there's an agenting stream, there's kind of like a cap and analytics stream, and there's a media broadcast stream. So we have a lot of students who either want to write, broadcast, podcast, some kind of like hybridization of all three. So we want to give them like very hands-on experience. So this exercise in question was a game recap. We split our students in half. We took them to each of a game, and we did a post-game scrum. In some cases, their very first post-game scrum, with players in that game. And then we tell them, we want you to write a game recap. But, from my perspective, a little bit different than Howard and J.A.'s, who come from a very legacy journalism background. I'm like, you can be creative. Like, feel free to take chances and get creative with this. I've read 1 million game recaps, and a big part of our program is finding your voice, because whatever part of broadcast and media you want to get into, your voice is going to be what sets you apart. And we have a lot of emulation, as you know, Wes, like in this industry. So I think a thing that is difficult as well as takes time, which is always what I stress, like you're not going to find it overnight. And in order to find it, you have to take chances. And sometimes you have to fail and fall on your face and be like, that didn't work at all. So in this case, this student, her background was more with covering hockey. She covers hockey for her college team. And she was saying how when she writes about hockey, she knows the language, she kind of knows the territory. She feels the impulse much more freely to get creative, and to sort of like insert herself, not in the first person, but insert her unique viewpoint into what she's seeing. And that's the thing that always is very different. It's like, we all technically could say that was a layup, right? Like we know that that's what that was, but like, how did it come about? What are kind of the movements? Who's guarding that person? Did they cut through traffic? Were they fatigued? Like there's all these things that you can notice in and around in basketball. What is one specific move? So I wanted more of that from her. And I'd read it in other pieces, because another piece leading up to this was an interview. They had to interview one of their classmates and basically write a profile about them. And in that, the language was very descriptive, and this piece, it just became very flat. And I could almost feel, there were parts in the piece where I could feel her kind of personality and perspective edging in, and then she would pull it back, and it became very much just a recap of the game. And I wondered why. And I mean, frankly, it was pretty heartbreaking for me, right, reading it, because she was saying she pictures a male audience, kind of this like composite male audience when she writes about basketball and how critical they are. And because of that, she feels the need to oversimplify what it is she's saying. And I understand this impulse as someone who probably felt it when I first started writing about basketball. You want to triple check and make sure everything you're saying is, quote, correct and right. But sometimes in order to get down what you feel is right and the correct thing, you're just killing the impulse to tell a story in a more interesting way, or to tell it in the way of like what it is you're seeing, which again, like who's to say that's right or wrong? It's the way that you're seeing the game. So I had to I feel like I like went way up here in my brain when we were sitting and she was telling me this, because my first impulse is very knee jerk to be like, don't ever do that. But I also don't want to scare my students, right? And I want to make it more of a teaching moment and kind of rein in that impulse to something more tangible. So that's what I told her, is just like, don't ever feel like you need to flatten yourself, especially if writing is the thing you want to get into, even if it's broadcast, whatever the form. You have to trust that your audience will find you and follow you, and that the thing that's going to set you apart, that is the most valuable thing in such a crowded and very competitive media landscape. And don't feel like you need to basically dumb yourself down for anybody.
Right. And like I said, I think you can apply this to almost anything, right? Where people in any industry, no matter at any point, I think you see things that work and you're like, okay, that works. That's what people want. That is a thing that's around, whether it's a game recap, which has been around for a billion years, or anything, like if it, whatever. But then how do you, there is no value in just recreating something that has already worked. The value is, okay, well, that worked. I could do a version of that that's mine, and includes my point of view or includes my special, knowledge or whatever it might be. And I think that is the part that I took away from that, is when you say like there's billions of recaps. We have a lifetime of recaps. What is it that you're going to add that's uniquely you and makes your product special and makes people want to consume it in whatever form that it is produced, right? Whether it's a game recap or something broadcast or a podcast or a TikTok video or whatever it is, and I think that was, to me, really interesting. And I'm glad that you're like able to hopefully teach these people these things, because I think that's a hugely important thing in our industry. It's okay, get the basics down, but now what makes you you? And that's going to be the part that people always follow and enjoy. That's going to be the part that people actually enjoy beyond just like the base level product.
Yeah. I mean, and to some degree, we're all trying to improve on the form.
Yeah.
I think when you just have found your form, you would then start to try and improve on your own form, right? And take it very uniquely into your own voice and the way that you kind of cover and look at things. But when you're just getting started, especially in a case like that, where it's like, I just want you to get a little bit creative in a game recap. You don't need to then you don't need to give me something that's completely brand new. But I do want to see parts of who you are and how you see things shine through, because that's that's to me what makes coverage interesting. Of course, the exercise, you have Howard and JA being like, you still need to deliver the facts of the game.
Right. We need the final score in the first two graphs. Right. Yes.
But where I worm my way in and try and get them to deviate is like, you don't need to focus on the game as a whole. Maybe you can focus on like a player that caught your eye. They don't even have to be a big part of the game, or like something that happened. Give me some atmospheric notes of like what's going on in the arena, especially at Summer League, where there can be a lot going on in the arena. Like there's all these kind of things to cherry pick from. So I just want to see a couple of those things.
I remember talking with somebody who, I don't want to say the name, and I won't even say the team, but was covering a team at the time, and I read his recaps quite a bit. And I remember, and he was very, very good, very accomplished writer, and is the last person to take notes from me. But I think that I was reading one of his recaps once, and he like looped in something like a metaphor about The Wire, or like compared something that happened with the team to an episode of The Wire. And I had not even watched The Wire yet. I have since watched it, so don't come after me in the comments. But it was to me it was such a swerve from the way that he usually wrote, because it was very just like, here are the basics. And he did it really well, but it was very just sort of like legacy media, basics style kind of thing. And then just one day, and I was like, dude, like, I can't believe you wrote The Wire into your game recap. And he's like, yeah, I know it was kind of late and it's been a long road trip or whatever. And I was like, no, man, I loved it. Like that was, I didn't know that you liked The Wire, and it wasn't inserting himself into the piece, but it was just a little something. It was like a little nugget into the mind of the author here, that if you understood what he meant and you watched The Wire, you're like, wow, what a cool metaphor. Like I totally understand what just happened. And if you didn't, who cares? Like it's just, you just kind of kept reading and you're like, whatever, I'm sure that meant sense to somebody. But I love like little things like that just sort of a little flair within the piece that just give you a little bit of insight into where the author's coming from.
Yeah, because those things are so rarely going to take you out of a piece, right?
Right.
They might actually, in your case, like it might be what you remember the most.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they don't resonate or hit as much, it's not like someone's going to be like, "Well, I'm not going to go any further. Like I'm done with this." That doesn't happen. So again, it's just like trying to foster that impulse, which I feel like can get stomped or kind of quelled or killed really easily in ways that are a bit heartbreaking, in the work that we do.
Do you have a hard time with sort of the changing landscape and like the different ways that we like push our product out? Do you have a hard time figuring out, okay, I know this is my voice, because you have a very strong voice. That's why I love reading your newsletter. That's why I like having you on the show. Is it hard to figure, okay, well, this voice in like I don't know how many words that your installment was, 2,000 words, 3,000. I literally have no idea.
It was over 3. It was long.
That's a compliment that I thought it was only 2,000. That's a great compliment. But in smaller doses, trying to figure out where to put it. And I know you're writing a book right now, so maybe it's longer doses. Like, is that an adjustment for you?
Yeah, I think there's a worry for sure, because I can see very clearly the shift to short form, right?
Mm-hmm.
Delivery in media, like in all media, whether it's in written form or, video, even podcasts, like I think are getting shorter and shorter. And of course, everything gets clipped, right? Mostly what gets aggregated are short clips of things. So I worry very deeply about the attention span in general of people, and what internet and social media and AI to a degree is doing to erode that. I'm not unaware of that. So I don't think, but I think there's still something that I need to maintain, which is, you might call it stubbornness. You might call it belief in that thing that I mentioned earlier of what it is I'm teaching, right? Is that I still have to trust there's an audience out there that wants and likes and appreciates what it is I'm doing. And yes, that might be longer form. I mean, I love books. I'm writing one, but I'm a reader first and foremost. So the idea that that's going away, I just don't think it is. It's too fulsome a form. And I think there's too many people who like the tangibility of it. You know what I mean? And if that's where I want to put myself, okay. A lot of people have told me oh, you should get TikTok, or you should do shorter form of what you do. But I honestly, Wes, I don't think I could. I don't see the way that what I do can get shorter. It is by nature longer form writing that trusts kind of implicitly that the person reading it understands that and also wants that. So again, that is probably a mix of pride and stubbornness, right? But I think in there somewhere is belief. And without that, why are we doing what we're doing at all?
I mean, I think everything there's the term niching down, right? That everybody likes to throw around, and it doesn't mean that stuff like books that people consider sort of old school media, which is just words written on pages. It doesn't mean it's going away. It just means that maybe there will never be another Huckleberry Finn.
Yeah, and I don't.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I don't mean to get holier than thou and be I haven't had frustrated conversations with friends and colleagues, and other writers when you see something go quote viral or really get aggregated. That's very short and lowest common denominator. And a part of you is cool. This is obviously what people want, and this is what gets really popular. And I've seen that, with Basketball Feelings, with the newsletter. Sometimes the shorter things that I do inevitably find the most traction.
Right.
You'd think in the data, then I'd be okay, this is what I need to do. But I fight against it.
Keep fighting. All right. So you mentioned Basketball Feelings. I developed a game here for us to play. Okay. It is called Basketball or Feelings. I'm going to present a number of topics, and we're going to decide whether or not we want to have a basketball conversation or a feelings conversation about that topic. So I'm just going to say a name, a phrase, a thing, and we'll just sort of go from there. Okay. Does that sound fun?
It does, but the trick of this seems that it can be both every time, but we'll see.
Right. If we want to really just take, if we want to just take people behind the curtain more than we already have,
Yeah.
it literally doesn't matter if we talk, if you say basketball or feelings. It's just a way to
You're
get into
giving
a
away
conversation.
my entire, this is like, cool. This is what I built a career on. Great. Let's go.
Let's do it. Kevin Durant.
Right now, I actually would say more basketball, but by his own hand, he is really trying to push this. Like, I am about basketball, hence I will be leaving this team that is not. Though this is a repetition that we see every 3 to 4 seasons with him, maybe less.
For somebody who fashions himself and builds himself up as the ultimate hooper, and he probably is, right? I mean, there was the photo of him bringing a basketball to a wedding the other day and just like practice. And we all remember the video of him practicing his jump shot in a club of some sort. There is an awful lot of feelings that are also involved in the Kevin Durant experience, which is so interesting when we think about his career. He's been trying to rip these feelings away from like his story almost, and yet they always tend to just sort of seep back into it.
There's always this sense that something is getting in the way of basketball for him, right? At least it's certainly, what would you say, post Warriors? I would say so.
Yes.
That something is that like
even or towards the end of the Warriors, even,
true.
Right?
Yeah. At like a pure level, what he says he wants, what we're to believe he wants is just basketball, like in its purest form, to play unhindered and like not to have anything else bother him. But yet he puts himself in these situations consciously, I would say, where I don't even think you need to look at it in retrospect, but like the Nets team, for example, right away you could tell that was not going to be a team that was primarily concerned with playing basketball.
Right.
I would say that even with the Suns then, specifically, I guess more organizationally, with the Rockets, I want to believe that he can perhaps find that again, even though, again, I think he is the detriment to all of this because he is the commonality in this case. But that's a young team who is like has found like ego and confidence and surety in the game really quickly. And I do hope that the purity of that, it does something for Kevin Durant, and that he doesn't then somehow upend it.
Right. Like,
I don't know.
What I find fascinating about Durant going to Houston is, and I was totally wrong on this because everybody kept saying, oh, Houston would be such a great spot for Kevin Durant and blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, I guess. But like, also that's never going to happen. And clearly I was wrong. But I was like, star players don't go to teams like the Houston Rockets where they say, because everybody in the media was just like, he should go to Houston. He's the missing piece in Houston, right? Like they obviously need a Kevin Durant. They're a Kevin Durant away. And I'm like, when was the last time a star player looked at himself and was like, where can I be the missing piece? Star players tend to look at these situations and say, what do I need to complete me?
Yeah.
It's usually not where can I go complete something? Where am I the missing piece? So for Durant to look at it as a basketball situation and say, nope, they are a me away and we can accomplish big things if I'm on that team now, that's pretty big because there is, I mean, who doesn't love Amen Thompson, right? Like who doesn't love some of the players on this team? But like star players, I'm like, is Kevin Durant really going to go to Houston to play with Amen Thompson and Alperen Sengun and Jabari Smith? Like, what does he care about those guys? Like, they're 10 years younger than him, more in some cases. Like, you just don't really see star players go play with guys they know, like Kyrie Irving, and you know, like what he did with Brooklyn. So I was surprised that he actually kind of swindled his way over to the Houston Rockets because you just don't see that, and I think that was sort of an under-discussed part of the Durant thing this summer.
I like that. As much as it does feel like a bit of a last-ditch attempt from him, or maybe just like, you know, there's a really good Renata Adler quote that I'm going to butcher right now, but it's like basically that when you get to a point of pure desperation with a situation in life, you throw a grenade yourself at that exact same point to force yourself out, like to force something to happen. And in a way, it kind of does feel like he forced himself into a situation where it's kind of going to be sink or swim right away, right? Like, it's sure they're younger and they theoretically have more runway in front of them, but Durant doesn't. And Durant is a quote fixer also doesn't.
Right.
Like, for Durant to have another team that is like missing a Kevin Durant shaped figure, this feels like the last time that happened was with the Warriors and they won a title, and that it clearly has not worked anywhere else since. This feels like the last time he could perhaps tell himself that. Or we can tell ourselves that.
And it's and as good as Houston is as a team, it sort of also feels like whatever championship window they're in now, which I guess they are because they acquired Durant, it is also all on him. Because like with the Warriors, it was on him and Steph and Clay and Draymond. With Brooklyn, it was with his friends there. And in Phoenix, it was on him and Booker and whatever. But now it's like, hey, if the Rockets... And this is probably why the Rockets made the trade anyway, because like, hey, if it doesn't work, we don't really care because our window is 4 or 5 years down the line anyway, but not for KD. And so it almost feels like it's all on him to make it work here also for a guy who has not yet won a championship since leaving Golden State, who has definitely one of the strangest careers and complicated legacies of any modern NBA superstar that we've had. So...
and kind of like the last caveat I will say, not only is he represented, like obviously he's representing himself in this, but I also feel like to a degree he is kind of a statesman for his generation of superstar who now in the league, again, it's becoming more of like, it might be a liability to sign these guys, at least like 2 of these guys to a team. Whereas before it's like, that's a sure title maker, right? Like this superstar duo. Whereas now I think teams look at it more of like, we don't know if we really want this. So again, if this kind of fails, then what really happens to the Kyries and the Westbrooks and,
it's almost, and everything you just said, it's almost at Durant. It's Durant's fault that it feels like those don't work because since he left
James Harden's fault too, like the James Hardens of it all as well. Things haven't been smooth sailing for a lot of guys, I think, in this era of class we're talking about. You could group Klay Thompson in there too. Like there's a lot of people you could group in there, but it's like things haven't been going so great for them.
I had a thing for a while because I love to obviously put things into lists and teams, which has been made very clear here. It was called the Disgruntled Four. And it was Durant, Kyrie, Harden, and Chris Paul. Yeah. Oh, it was a disgruntled 5, Westbrook. This is the disgruntled 5. So it was a starting 5, as things should be.
Which is like my twisted dream team.
Right, the disgruntled. And championship. And I guess I brought that up once because there was a saying like, oh, it's every summer there's a superstar that gets traded. And I was like, not really. Every summer, one of these superstars gets traded. It's not like another superstar is going to get traded. If you want one of these guys every summer, chances are you're going to get one. You could get one of them, but not all the other superstars. So that was sort of why I brought that up. All right, that's Kevin Durant. Next topic, Chris Paul. And I want to read you a quote here. This is from his reintroductory press conference to the Clippers. Okay. Quote, I'm just so excited about the moves that the team has made this offseason. Brad coming to the team, Bradley Beal, Brooke Lopez, all the young guys. I talked to James Harden, I talked to Kawhi Leonard, and I'm even more excited about what I think we have a chance to do. End quote. Basketball or feelings for Chris Paul?
Pure feelings. This is pure feelings. This is like, I'm surprised he didn't say Lob City like 2, or like I'm like reinitiating as the mayor of Lob City. I think the thing with this, as much as I do really love it, I love it for Chris Paul. I feel like I was such a late fan of Chris Paul in his career. I think I stubbornly held out as stubbornly as Chris Paul does anything. So maybe kind of fitting, but watching him a little bit adrift in the last couple of seasons has been a bummer. So I like this. And a part of me really kind of wants him to step back into the shoes of what he did for that team. Just like this menacing, bossy, someone needs to run this show and damn it, it's going to be me kind of figure. Because if you look at the Clippers, there really isn't a clear person like that. It's not Kawhi. I think maybe James Harden sometimes thinks it's him. It's not. It's never James Harden, right? Like it should and could be Chris Paul. So I think to whatever end the basketball of this fits in, which is like I don't know how much he's going to play really like meaningful minutes. there still feels like a very real important part for him on a team like this. And to be like, let's be honest too, like the Clippers don't have an identity and haven't really had one for seasons and seasons now, as much money as they want to throw behind this like face recognition dome that they play in, and like we're the team of the future. It's like no one really knows who you are yet. You know, you tried to rip off the DNA of the Raptors, that didn't work, and you've kind of been adrift ever since. So if he can bring them back to that, I think that last point where they did have a very clear identity of the way they wanted to play, who they were, what their strong suits were, even if it doesn't follow perfectly in form, I think it can work and function.
So there's a brief basketball part of this. I talked about it in my last episode, so I don't want to do too much of it here. But I do like the idea of Chris Paul being on this team because the offense last year for the Clippers was a lot of James Harden pick and roll or Kawhi Leonard post-ups. And it felt like every half-court possession started with one of those two things. And it was fine. It worked. They had a pretty decent half-court offense. It was okay. I like that Ty Lue can now go to something else on the menu. It's like, okay, I have these two things, and now I also have Chris Paul, who is just always running pick and roll and doing things. And when Harden is off the court, Paul can do those things, and that's helpful from a basketball perspective. From a feelings part of this, when he says something like, I'm really excited about what we can do, my mind immediately goes to, can the Clippers win the championship? Because it would be... And for the record, I don't think that they can. I just wrote for RealGM that I will never... I have two rules in the NBA. It's don't watch the Hornets after February and never trust the Clippers. And I like this team. I will not allow myself to trust this team. And I will never trust that the Clippers can win the championship. If it's Game 7, they're up 20, and there's a minute left in the NBA Finals, I still won't believe that they've won the championship until they're actually holding the Larry O'Brien trophy. That said... When he says something like that, I'm like, well, what if they do win the championship? Would this not be the most, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the most rewarding championship of all time? It would just be the most, like, the most excellent exhale ever in NBA history because it's Chris Paul, who has never won a ring, for the organization that he kind of became famous with. I know it wasn't his first team, but like he became Chris Paul with the Clippers. For an organization that also has never won a championship, and he would be doing it in what sounds like could be his last season, like the ultimate swan song. Who knows, right? Like if all these things work and Kawhi is just magically healthy, and Kawhi did finish the playoffs last year healthy for the first time in a very long time, which is a good sign. Let's say that the Clippers do make that run, and they are in the NBA Finals, and Chris Paul is a part of this team. It would be maybe the closest thing to Dirk winning in 2011, but almost even more, just because it's been the thing that's dodged both the organization and the player for so long, and to be doing it in what is probably his final season would be like the craziest basketball story I could think of.
Yeah, see, I was also like, yeah, I never talked myself into the Clippers, but then I realized I did when they had Russell Westbrook. It didn't take much for me. So
that would be a fun exercise to do with people who watch the league and cover the league. Just like, when did you most feel betrayed by the Clippers? At what point did you talk yourself most into it? And then at what point did you feel most betrayed?
It was that season for me.
We can do the same exercise for the 76ers, by the way. Like
oh no, I'm trying to think of when I stopped talking. I can't. There's like they're like a walking tragedy. They're a walking Greek tragedy team to me, which I love writing about, but I don't believe in them. However, you have fully convinced me that this is what we're due. If anything, it's also like to go back to what I said earlier about Durant. I feel like it would be also desperately needed for that class of guys, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got a few of them on that Clippers team. So it buys Durant a couple more years too, in a way.
Basketball or feelings? ESPN's long form piece on Joel Embiid.
It's a lot of feelings in that. It took me, for someone who just went on and on about long form, like only wanting long form, it took me, I mean, I was in Vegas when it came out, but it did take me a while to read it. I like the impulse of that. I'm very curious, of the relationship there and how well fostered it was, like just to be able to sit and talk with Embiid over this long period of a time, it depresses me greatly because it's like, this is the kind of thing I wish we could all do, but there just isn't access or ability anymore to like sit with a story essentially for months and months and a person. My hope with it is that how much people really liked it and responded to it also shows the time that it takes, the necessary time that it takes to tell these stories and write these stories, right? That people really enjoy. Like, yeah, we talk to these athletes like every other day sometimes, right? If you're covering, or every day if you're a beat reporter, and there's a lot of familiarity, it still doesn't mean you would like walk away with something like that,
Right.
at the end of a season or halfway through a season. It takes real trust and I think intention. And some of that has to live outside of basketball, which is again like what you saw a lot of in that story, to get that sort of repertoire with somebody, right? That's like that's a real relationship, I think, that kind of happened there. So that's like my seeding hope for it. I don't know if that will happen. I hope this isn't just one of those weird like writerly or media anomalies where like we are also like, oh, this was so important and we really loved it, and then people will forget about it. It doesn't feel that way, but I don't know.
I do worry it got overly aggregated, and the talking points coming away from it are just sort of like the little not sound bites in this, like the little quotes, the little big sort of graphic with Joel Embiid's face on it, and he's like hurt, and then it says some sort of quote, and then that's what it is. But I do think that in the NBA world, people responded to that quite a bit. And if you're another player hoping for a level of understanding, maybe you would look at this and say, you know what, maybe I will choose a writer or say yes to a writer who approaches me and do something like this in the summer. Probably not in the season, but I think that's fine. I think the summer is when we kind of need these pieces because it's a good time to kind of zoom out and reflect.
And this happened, like a lot of the reporting happened also in the season, right?
Correct.
Like there were sometimes in conversations that they had in season. So even if the mandate was like, you can write this, but it can't come out until the off season, sure. Like, because again, that's like the time that it took. But yeah, even a tinier like takeaway from that, Wes, would be like, if a player is like, you know what, I'm going to maybe answer these questions a little bit differently than I normally would, or I'm going to be a bit more candid, or I'm going to feel I'm going to trust that I can be a bit more candid, and that the person on the other end of this question will take that for what it is, that is my hope.
Yeah. It is interesting to me that I guess the two big stories, unless I'm forgetting something, but the two big sort of marquee stories from the summer so far were two health related stories with Joel Embiid and Luka Doncic. I'm just pointing that out. I have literally given that zero thought until just now, but it's just interesting to me, and I don't know what that means.
I mean, I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you left out the third story, which is the sixth summer league recap.
Correct. Other than you're right.
Which was, if anything, about its slow deterioration of health. But
sure. How long does it take you to get used to Vegas? You did hint at this in the piece. I did. And maybe not even a hint. You pretty much just outright said it. But just personally, how long did it take you this time to get used to Vegas?
It usually takes the first weekend, but I think it's a flawed metric because it's also that is when the most people are there.
Right.
And you're kind of having all these run-ins and then all these small goodbyes in a given day, which I think does something to your brain because you're constantly seeing people that you're so happy to see. And then you're saying goodbye to them. And you're like, I don't know when I'll see you again. Right. Like it can be there's like
it could be 15 minutes from now, or we cross each other in the or next year, or maybe I don't even run into you next year.
I know.
And it's 3 years from now. Yeah.
I've like in talking with people about that feeling over the years, and especially this year, it's gone from like funereal, like a bit of like a receiving line that feeling can feel like. It feels very anxiety inducing. There's like definitely this like summer league blues that people get like mixed up in the joy of being there. So for me, things tend to normalize once that first weekend is out of the way. But I also would say that if I was to, for example, just come in for sports business classroom and I only came in on like the Sunday or Monday, I'd feel really weird that I missed out on that like first, like Fast and Furious first like 72 hours. Yeah. It would like not set the pace properly. It would be the responsible thing to do. but it would not do justice to, I think, like what the feeling is.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to explain the first like 2 to 3 days. Like those first 48 to 70,
It's like emotional whiplash.
it's crazy. And I never felt it, I think, as heavy as I had felt it this past, like these last,
Like
whatever,
how
month
I
ago,
saw
whenever
you
that
for
was.
what?
I
The
saw you,
elevator?
yeah, for an elevator for like 4 seconds.
That was it.
And that was it.
And I don't even know what day that was, Wes.
I have no idea. I don't even remember what game I was going to or what was happening. It's crazy. All right, I got 2 more topics for you.
Okay.
Basketball or feelings, the Toronto Raptors.
Oh, okay. Well, they want to believe it's basketball, but it's still very much feelings, I think. You can't fire Masai Ujiri and then be like, we're just about basketball this season. Good luck to you. Mostly, I also think that there's going to be a real latent wave of feelings to this, because what I've told people is that even if you are from Toronto, certainly if you're not, but if you are from Toronto, I think there's a real no one really understands kind of the depth and the reach that Masai Ujiri had on fandom and like the interpretation of fandom for people in Toronto. It does get like used as a line of like believe in themselves, like. But that was something he actually did and achieved, and that doesn't really exist in Toronto sports, right? Which have mostly been heartbreaking for a lot of people, like across any sport, any pro sport.
I would apologize about the Canadians, or not the Canadians. Was
the Leafs, yeah.
The Leafs. I would apologize with Leafs, but I won't, because the Panthers.
Nor should you. But I mean, that's a great prime example of that belief and heartbreak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think more than that, like Masai went into communities like in and around the city and kind of touched these communities personally and made them feel part of something, like a much deeper sort of ingrained network that sports can do that, right? Like sports can hold people in that way, even if when a team is bad or not winning, or, in the Raptors case, when they went to Tampa, not physically there for a season, they could still hold people's attention and fandom. And because it was, he was like emotive, he was honest, he's candid, sometimes to his own detriment. I think like to his own detriment in his stubbornness and like his pride. And that is what I believe got him fired. So, but there's this thing of like sticking to your beliefs, which again, in kind of the wishy-washy world of Toronto sports fandom, didn't exist so much before Masai. So I will say there's going to be this kind of like, latent sort of hangover period or whiplash that doesn't really hit people until the season starts and the recognition of that loss is there. And then I do think that is probably going to echo out for a few seasons to come on the pure basketball side of things.
Well, if I could make one point on the Masai point too, because when I think about his tenure in Toronto, he chose Toronto, he wanted to be there, and he tried to make it. I mean, he obviously won a championship there, which is the biggest thing that you think of, but he tried to erase the whole like Toronto is just sort of the organization that you don't really want to play for in the NBA. And you think about the way Vince Carter, on the way out of Toronto and things like that, and then some of the players that have come through. And I guess you could probably credit DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry first and foremost with this. But like being like, no, Toronto's a destination. I want to be here. There's pride in playing for the Raptors and all these things. But then, of course, winning the title is the sort of piece that cements all of that. So that was sort of my takeaway from
the or the players that just like never showed up, right? That we're supposed to, and we're just like, nah. So again, I think like erasing that took a lot of work and time. On the pure basketball front, I'm very heartened by what I saw at Summer League. Raptors were number 1 seed until they were somehow demolished by the Sacramento Kings Summer League team. I mean, I get it is Summer League, but I will say the Raptors Summer League like starting lineup is the bench. So it's like there's a very close tie from like what that kind of basketball was to what the actual basketball is going to be. And I don't know, Brandon Ingram and Scotty Barnes said they're going to be in the playoffs this year. So,
I mean, look, I don't know how much of an accomplishment that is in the Eastern Conference, but hey, it's something.
It's basketball.
It is one of those teams that after their offseason, I was just sort of like, ugh, that's it? Like, I'm kind of like, and then I was looking at the roster and I was looking at the rest of the East. And granted, it's an East without the Celtics and the Pacers basically for a year. Who knows what's going to go on with the Sixers? And I'm just like, you know what? I'm looking at this roster. I still like some of the guys. I'm a Grady Dick believer. I'm a Jacoby Walter big time believer. Like there's guys that I like, and I'm like, you know what? I think I like this roster more after having looked at it than after just sort of instant knee jerk reaction after the offseason where you felt like, okay, you re-signed Jakob Poeltl and Brandon Ingram, like whoop-de-doo. But then you look at the roster, and like, you know what? I kind of like pieces. I like a lot of the pieces here.
They're not an at a glance team, I'll say. They're a team that requires some studying, and I think that's going to put a lot of people off because a lot of people are still like, why would I study that team?
Right.
We'll see.
Last one here. The term is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I'll explain it by saying this in the most awkward way I could possibly do it.
Okay.
Are we having the appropriate conversation about SGA, do you think? Because it does feel like coming off of the championship and the dominance with which he helped win that championship, the dominant season that he had, it still feels like most of the conversation, 98% of the conversation is the Thunder have built a dynasty and it's the team. And SGA would prefer it that way. I don't care. I think that the season SGA just had with the MVP, the finals MVP, leading that team to a championship, its first in franchise history. Do you think we're having the appropriate conversation about SGA after we kind of have this whole conversation about, well, they just re-signed these guys and now are we looking at a Thunder dynasty?
First, I'll say this is like the perfect basketball and feeling marriage, I think.
Because that's for last.
Yeah, because what you're describing is rooted in a feeling, right? And whether you feel like that is being recognized like enough. And I don't actually think it is. I think, yes, he would prefer the framing to be this is a team win. This is a team that has like years and years ahead of them. They've built very carefully and deliberately, consciously to this point for that reason. But also you don't get here or anywhere close to here without Shai. I think there's an interesting lag between maybe the Canadian interpretation, and I say that as someone who wrote a feature on Shai for the first issue of Slam Canada, and the idea was this, like, what I fought so hard against was the premise that was wanted was like Shai's on the rise, like he's arrived, and it's like this happens so much in Canadian basketball of like they're on the rise. It's like, no, they're here. Like it's happened. It's already happened,
Right.
And I felt that was like kind of an old trope and I didn't really want to use it. And maybe that's still the sense in like an American perspective on Shai as a Canadian leader. But even that I feel like is a bit tired. I don't know. You think of like the Steve Nashes of the world. I feel like there's something of identity tied up in this feeling of what you're like pointing at. If like, are we giving enough due to this guy? Like, is the Canadianness of it all like kind of holding him back in a way? And I don't mean this on like face of the league, outsider thing. I just mean if like he's not the kind of star to put himself first, and to a degree, I think the athletes who stand out the most and the longest are the ones that have been quite at times reckless, right, about doing that and making everything about themselves and shaping a narrative around themselves, sometimes reinventing themselves, like specifically just for that. Like you think of somebody like Kobe, right? And it as like a media ploy, it worked. It's still working.
Right.
So there's obviously shades to it. And I do wonder what this season kind of looks like for him, maybe with the confidence and assurance of the MVP and then the title, of like how this can be more expansive for his game, or maybe how this frees him up to be a bit louder about himself. Yeah,
I want to just to be clear, this was one of the most dominant guard seasons we've ever seen. And he just won the MVP over Nikola Jokic, who had won multiple MVPs, had a very strong case to win the MVP. I would have voted SGA, but had a very strong case. It was not an easy decision. After maybe posting the best season of his career. So for SGA to just sort of lap Jokic in that way, just that alone is a huge story. But first of all, the NBA screws up how they do the MVP award. It just sort of happens, and then there's more games, and we're just like, what happened? Nobody really cares, and you're just sort of moving on. So you just had that, and then they went ahead and won the championship, and SGA was phenomenal. Like, this wasn't a guy who had a great regular season and then just like was lifted with his teammates to a championship. He led that team to a championship. He was amazing in the most important moments of those games. And then with Halliburton going down in the devastating way he did in Game 7, and the fact that it even went Game 7, maybe people are just like not as high. But I'm like, you got to look at what just happened here and look at what this guy just put together. I didn't think that there was going to be a world with, like, at this point where Jokic wasn't the clear number one guy in the NBA. I just think that he was hitting like LeBron-like levels in the 2010s of there. It's LeBron and it's everybody else, and you guys can all fight for number 2, but LeBron's up here at number 1, and it's not close. And Jokic was there in my opinion for a couple of years, and I thought he was just going to be there for a few more years. And SGA has just sort of climbed up that ladder and just be like, nope, I'm in this conversation, I'm in this tier now. I just think that's remarkable. So that's sort of what I'm getting at. The thing I want to circle back to that you said that I didn't think about before, but I think it's a fascinating point, is that he doesn't really have any branding. Like, I think about this, and I've brought this up before, but like my dad talking to me in the finals. Well, is it the AT&T commercial that it's SGA, Chet, and Jalen Williams wearing the blue Blazers?
So. Yeah.
And he's like, I had no idea who those people were until the finals. I'm like, that ran the entire playoffs. That ran for 2 months. You just thought it was just 3 random guys?
I love
just
that.
Tall guys?
I love that.
He's like, yeah, I had no idea. These guys are in the finals. I was like, yeah, they're the favorites. Like, what are you talking about? And I was like, that's a problem, not to be super anecdotal, but that felt like a problem to me. But he doesn't have like the Kobe Mamba mentality thing. Or even you think about, again, American stars. Like, James Harden grew a beard just so that somebody would say something about him. Anthony Davis was the brow forever at Duke. Like, and that was like he's like, I got a unibrow. That's my thing. And you're just like, okay, I guess, like, whatever. You think about LeBron's sort of thing was more bestowed on him as sort of the next Michael Jordan thing. But like he embraced it and ran with it, to his credit. You think about just like how American stars kind of come up and they're like, I just need a hook. Like Kyrie Irving, I'm galaxy brain, smarter than everybody in the room. Jaylen Brown was like, I want to be that too, but I also play chess. And everybody's got like a thing, and SGA has nothing. He's got like, I have no idea what his interests are. As far as I know, he's like every other NBA player in the league, like the 15th guy on the roster, the first guy. He wants to play Xbox, and he wants to play hoops, and he wants to hang out with his friends, and that's it. Like, I know nothing about this guy. There's no branding part of him, and I think that's why my dad doesn't recognize him in commercials.
But I think this is very interesting because it goes back to the basketball side of this, which is like that OKC team played and presented themselves as this like purity, basketball pure team, right? Purity of the game, like purity of like, that's the only reason we need to be doing this. It's like all we want to do. That's it. Be all and all, which like, I guess do people find that boring? Like, do people find that not compelling? Because, to go back to the MVP thing, I remember people who did have votes, like talking to them about it. And there was this real reticence, right? To give it, a part of that, of course, is like, yeah, the numbers that Jokic was putting up all throughout the season, like career best, like record best, right? But there was a real reticence to like, quote, like give it to Shai, like it would be handing him something. And it's like, he hadn't earned it yet, or he wasn't there yet, when it's like, all that is arbitrary. At some point, these things are just like, there is a collective decision or kind of a shift, and then it moves in that person's direction. Not to say, again, like none of this has to do with the fact that like Shai didn't earn it. Right. But I don't know where that puts us now, I guess. Like, I've just answered the question with another question, but I do remember that of like the reluctance about him as a star.
And I think we fall into this whole like, okay, how much do you reward a player with a good team versus a player with not such a good team and whatever. I don't know. I crunched the numbers. I did all this stuff. I watched a ton of, luckily enough for me, my favorite teams to watch this season were the Thunder and the Nuggets. So I just saw a bunch of them the whole time. And I was like, and there was days where I thought it was definitely Jokic, and there was days where I definitely thought it was SGA. Like I said, my fake ballot, I would have had SGA. And I would have felt very strongly about that. But, and I did feel very strongly about that. But I think it's not, I don't think people don't find them compelling. I don't know if it's like a basketball purity, like anti thing. I think they find him hard to talk about. Like, there's no hook. There's no like like with Steph even, who isn't the most, like, whatever. Everybody kind of loves Steph, but it was like the whole break the game thing. Is 3-point shooting good at this level for the NBA? And he became the avatar for that. And LeBron, like, is he the greatest? And all these things. Like, there was something polarizing about those players, but it doesn't even necessarily need to be polarizing. They just need a hook. And I feel like people just don't know what to say about SGA other than, boy, this guy's really damn good at basketball. And that might be the hardest hook because there's a lot of players who are really good at basketball, but it's until you become like dominant that it becomes your number one hook, right? Because now that's the Michael Jordan hook. It's somehow become the Kobe hook, although he kind of got in there through the side door with the Mamba mentality part of it. But it'll almost be like SGA doesn't have a brand or an identifier or a hook until he's won like 4 championships, and then it's like, oh, he's the ultimate winner, basketball purity over everything, all of this stuff, and then you'll kind of see it. Maybe it'll sort of come into focus in retrospect.
Maybe. And I mean, it's a good point because even the way that he plays, like the way that he's very good at basketball is so quiet, right? Like it takes real concentration to kind of, I don't know, understand even its impactfulness. And yeah, he can be kind of loud, but like when you say the way that like Jordan was excellent, like Jordan also loved to talk about being so good.
That's true. There was like a Muhammad Ali quality to it.
And I think like maybe that was part and parcel with like sports personalities and personas at the time. But like Shai is quiet. He's like, as someone who's talked to him, like, and knows people around him, like he's very funny. He's very genuine. He's super thoughtful, but he's quiet. And it's like all these things are not what you would normally associate with like an NBA caliber superstar, right? Or it's like not what we've traditionally had. So like, how do you sell someone that is like thoughtful and talented?
Right.
It's to me, I'm like,
right?
Easy sell, but like, it's not.
I think that's why we in the media space, the conversation keeps shifting back to how do we talk about this team? How do we talk about this player? Is he the face of a dynasty? Is like Tom Brady is as uninteresting as they come, but he's one of the most famous football players of all time because of the New England Patriots dynasty. And maybe that's SGA's path. He's just outwardly uninteresting. Like he's not going to give the public a whole lot.
Interesting. And the thing,
I agree with you
too, is like, if you, not to make it all about like fashion, but you look at somebody who also like puts the looks he does together.
Right.
And does not have a stylist, right? Like there's, again, to me that like speaks to a deeper interest in like, I don't know, cognition and the way that he like sees himself in the world and wants to fit into it and kind of like speaks through these other things. Like that is more interesting to me, but again, hard to translate.
Right. For us, like in the media, like trying, or not
in
even
our
us,
blunt,
but like
in like the still blunt language of basketball. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. For the 5-minute pregame leading up to the game, how do they have the conversation that it just took us 15 minutes to have? Right.
And we still haven't really landed on.
We haven't. We've basically said nothing, in 15 minutes, and it feels like we're still trying to figure this out. Katie Heindl writes the Basketball Feelings newsletter. It is a must-read. If you haven't already signed up, please do go ahead and sign up. And you've got the book coming out. Are you able to share an update? Do you want to share an update?
I don't want to.
Okay,
just
good.
Wish me luck. Put your positive thoughts to me out in the universe.
Very good. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.